I can't say too much about the next speaker without being a bit weird, because it's me. So I'm going to talk about monetization design, hopefully some useful stuff. My slides should hopefully appear soon. There we go. Now, in the original spec, the lineup, I was talking about monetization, a story of love and retention. Unfortunately, I ran out of time to do those slides. So it's not going to be quite so romantic, but hopefully I can still take with you the desire to create a relationship. The key thing I want to try and talk about is the difference between hyper-casual and long-term games as a service, and how we can build long-term meaningful relationships with our players, whatever kind of business model we're going to build. Because I think it's important to have a meaningful relationship with your player. I think it's a vital thing. That means we have to understand each other. We have to romance each other. We have to woo each other, get there, to appeal our chosen person to come and spend time with us. And we need to make that time feel meaningful. So that's kind of what we're going to try and talk about, but it'll be a little bit more clinical than I originally planned. Why do we play games? Anyone? Why do you play games? Because it's fun. What makes it fun, though? And is it just fun we're after? Fun is a very ambiguous word. Gabriel?
I think it's fun and sense of achievement.
Sense of achievement. So a sense of, shall we say, competence. I want to feel good at something. I want to feel competent at something when I play a game. Not every game is going to have the same sense of competence, same sense of skills that you're using. But one of the things that games does that's unique to the media, unlike a film, we don't feel competent when we watch a film, do we? Well, maybe if we watch, I don't know, there's a few films out there which are so hard to watch that it's in a sense of achievement just to get through them. But feeling competent is a good thing. But completion, that sense that you've done the jigsaw puzzle and you put the last piece in. Yes, I've done it. I've completed something. In our everyday lives, we don't get to feel like that. Not normally. And games give us that space to feel good because we've finished something. Most of my career is unfinished work. And I like the fact that every once in a while when I play a game, I know I've done it, I've achieved something, I've got to the next level, but I want there to be another level to go for as well, so I can feel complete again. Control is actually an important part of the experience. I want to feel like I'm in control. I have choices. It's a difficult one because I love Monument Valley, but in my head I can't get over the fact that I actually don't have any choice. I only have to find where the designer told me I had to be and do the action the designer told me to do. It is one of the most beautiful puzzle games ever constructed, and I thoroughly recommend everyone to check it out if you've never played it. I'm really glad for the team who won a BAFTA for it. BAFTA was the British Film and Television Association Award, one of the best games of that year. It is a beautiful experience, but it doesn't give me a sense of autonomy. I think autonomy is actually something that games can do that no other medium can do as well. And finally, social capital. What does that mean? Why do you think flossing dancing has become famous? Because of Fortnite. Why has Fortnite become the thing where people do that? Because it's a social experience where we can interact with each other and you can see my avatar and you can see the outfit that I've unlocked in that particular season. I must have been good or spent the right money. It's a way of saying, look at me. People like saying, look at me. I mean, you can do it in all sorts of subtle ways. It doesn't have to be overt. In fact, actually, in some cultures, it's actually about being, look, I'm part of the group. If you go and play World of Warcraft, you want people to know that you understand it. If you play League of Legends, you need to understand the rules and the law to be able to understand what's going on. I don't understand League of Legends because I haven't spent months playing it. So I don't watch League of Legends esports, but I know it's one of the most popular esports out there because you have to have the social capital, the engagement to belong to the tribes that play that game. So why we play games is really interesting. How much time do you spend when you look at your game design thinking about why people play? I spend a lot of time thinking about it, as you can probably tell. It's not the same reasons why we spend money. Why do you spend money on a game? Turns out it's the same reasons we spend money in anything. So think about this, right? So would you buy a movie if you weren't excited about that movie and what it might be? Would you pay for a cinema ticket if you weren't looking forward to the film and the film had great reviews? If somebody said the film was going to be rubbish, garbage, whatever you want to say, would you go and spend the money on the ticket? Well, probably not. Unless you have an anticipation of the value of the experience, most people won't do it. But also, if you don't have a fear of missing out, if I don't see it this week, I'm going to miss it because it's going to leave the cinemas, why would I go to that film? The same thing applies to games. If there's not things inside the game that I worry about missing out on, then I'm not going to do it. A classic one was something like Puzzles and Dragons had a season where they had the Hello Kitty characters, the Sanrio characters in it. So it was a month, and only a month, where you could get the Sanrio characters, and some of them you would have to pay to get, and some of them you'd have to play a lot or spend money to speed up your play in order to get all the characters. And people would literally spend a huge amount of time and effort just because they want to get all those characters. This includes a friend of mine, Toit, who is a hardcore gamer. And he got them because he wanted to show his kids these characters in the game. It's a great talk online where he talks about this. But the idea of fear of missing out, or opportunity cost, as I sometimes call it, is an important factor. If we don't say there's a reason to do it now, why would somebody go and buy your thing in your game right now, or buy your game now? Abnegation is a bit of a hard one. Abnegation is about putting aside the other things I should do. And mostly this applies to me when I should be doing the washing up, but I've just got Baldur's Gate on my Switch, and I just want to play that a bit more. So I put aside, I abnegate my other responsibilities in order to play that game. So we have to be able to put aside the things we should do. Because essentially we can't generally make people buy things. What we can do is create the conditions where they give themselves permission. I can't make you set aside the things you should be doing. I can simply create enough anticipation, enough fear of missing out, enough social value inherent to the game that you give yourself permission to buy it. But I'm not talking about manipulation here. I don't think manipulation is a good thing in any way. Yes, you could trick somebody into doing something, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about creating conditions for people to choose willingly to pay and feel good about it. That's what we want. We want people to do it again, don't we? We want people to pay, not just once, but multiple times. We want people to watch ads, not just once, but multiple times, and feel that was a good thing. This isn't games research that delivered this. This is actually research from the 1960s about consumer behavior as risk. This is about analysing why any human being buys anything. So I've not just made this up, there's actual science in there. So in order to do that, in order to work out how we're going to build a game which people will anticipate, feel desire, satisfaction, reward, and that will scale, I look at games by breaking them down in this way. What's the mechanic? Mechanic is what we do. It's the start condition, it's the challenge, it's the reward. This is a process that we do. It could be actions, it could be creation, it could be skill, it could be solving problems, whatever it might be, but the things that we do in play. I then look at context. Context is why we play. So that's the purpose and progression in the game, so why we do it. We do it because we want to feel a sense of purpose. We also want to have ability to see that we have progressed. There's also the economy as part of this process. The game economy can be an intrinsic part of why people play, because of that completion I was talking about earlier, this balancing, optimization. But equally, narrative, story can be an incredibly important part of this. one way I'd sum it up is it's the expectation of why I would play again. So think about that. When you play a game, what is it that when you finish playing that makes you go back to it? Whether it's a day later, or a week later, or a month later. What keeps you going back? You can't just hope your game is going to have enough expectation that people go back to play. You have to design it. You have to think about it. You have to test it. So planning the way your game works in the context loop is about building up that reason to return and keep playing. And then I have my third loop, for want of a better phrase, where I look at the reasons we keep playing beyond just now. And that's where the social engagement comes in. So that means collaboration. So if we play together and we collaborate in a game, or if we compete. So leaderboards can be one thing, but actually leaderboards aren't very sticky. So what happens when I really detailedly compete with somebody? Lifestyle. What is the day-to-day routine of the player, and how does our game fit into their routine? Do you think about that? When you look at your game design, do you think, what are the people going to be doing when they're playing my game, and why would they keep playing? What's going to stop them playing? Why would they come back? Mode of use is about the physicality of the device. So, for example, when I play on a phone versus when I play on a tablet versus when I play on a PC or a laptop or in my office at home or on my console if I've got one, the way that we play is profoundly affected by the devices and the context in which we use those devices. The last bit is cultural. Well, what does that mean? Well, for me, this is about why would anyone record themselves playing your game and share it on YouTube? Why would they go onto Twitch with your game and share that? How can you create a cultural experience where it's not just about your players playing the game, it's about your players' audience sharing your game? Do you think about that? I do. I don't necessarily think I've got a good answer every time, but I want to think about it. So the reason I'm talking about all of this stuff is I'm trying to get you ready to think about what games mean. I'm trying to get you to think about where your game fits into the cycle and how you can then think about monetization. Because I want a relationship with the player. I need to understand what the player wants. I need to understand what my game delivers. I need to understand where the value is. How we satisfy players' wants. And different games have different flavors and characteristics. And this is a simplified way of looking at it. So at this end, we've got the hyper-casual all the way down to EVE Online, which is about as hardcore as you get. One thing that's common about them is from this end to this end, it gets more complicated, doesn't it? But the scale gets smaller. So you have to think about that when you want to build a relationship with your player, because you've got to think about who is going to be playing, what do they want, and think about the complexity profile of your game and what that means to the scale of the audience you can target. It's not necessarily one-to-one, by the way, but in general, this is kind of the point. So that's kind of interesting. But then there's also how we charge people for things. Another parameter I think is worth considering. So whether it's something like an in-world ad, so that's actually an ad inside this fashion game, or it's whether using soft currency, or even just time, to be honest, but something gameplay that they don't have to pay cash for, that you've earned through play. That could be the way that you exchange for things in your game. Or rewarded ads. We know about rewarded ads. We had the Unity guys up earlier. We've got interstitial style ads. So these are the ads that appear between the menus, between your play and the next play. And then you've got payments, one-off payments, non-recurring payments, so actual money, real money being spent. And then finally at the end, we've got reoccurring payments. This is a bit odd, because a reoccurring payments we make once have a massive barrier to get to, but what happens there is, once you've got there, they continue paying ongoing. So there's lots of value in all these different business models. And quite a lot of games can have more than one of them. Hybrid monetization is a term that's increasingly being talked about. It's about this. But what's happening here is the amount of impact we have on the player, the nagging that we're doing, the pressure we're putting on players increases from here to there. The level of commitment we're asking them to make, the barriers have to be considered. So thinking about the barrier that you're going to present when you create monetizable items inside a game, or even buying up front. And I'd actually say a paid game, a buy up front game, is just a non-reoccurring payment. So it doesn't matter if you're making a paid game, you can. I'm not a big fan of paid games, personally, because I can only charge people basically once and any DLC that I offer. And I generally aren't releasing DLC on a regular basis, so it's not necessarily going to get all of the audience. But you can do it. Subscription as well. You know, I'm a big fan of subscription, but don't make it all you can eat. Because if you have a recurring payment that gives you players everything, guess what? They can't buy anything new. Well, they can, but it's free. So you can't build anything new that they would have otherwise bought because you're not getting any more money, so you can't justify the spend because you're not going to get any increase in revenue. You might get more retention, possibly more conversion, but it's unlikely. Amazon Audible is quite an interesting model because actually it predefines. I'm going to get 1 or 2 books a month. I know I'm going to get 1 or 2 books every month. I can look forward to them when they arrive and they come, and I can consume them. And if I want more books, I add to my subscription. That kind of makes sense. Battle Pass. Fortnite's Battle Pass is a great subscription-like experience, but it's currently charged on a one-off basis. And I have to buy it each month. But it's interesting because it gives me something to look forward to each month. So again, think about what happens with the kind of monetization you're trying to use. How does it affect the way players feel about you? These are things you want them to spend money on. But they won't do it unless they care about them. And they won't respect you in the morning if you've taken advantage of them. So there's lots of different ways to exchange. There's also where we start getting into the sort of nitty-gritty. When you look at the kinds of things you want to sell, we've talked about the ways that we charge, but we haven't really talked about the kinds of things that you sell. There's really 4 kinds. We can have subsistence. You need to buy this thing or you can't play. You've got shortcuts. You need to, by getting this thing, your play is easier in some way. It could be a better gun. It could be armor. It could be you have a restart. So you might play a game and you fail. You get to restart where you were rather than having to go back to the beginning. These are kind of classic shortcuts. Social, it might just be, here's a great skin, I want that skin. One of my favorite skin deals was Pink Fury, which was in Overwatch. And it was a charity skin for breast cancer charity in the States. And they raised $12 million with a skin. $12 million for charity by having a particular, quite nice skin for that game. But skins say something about you. And social goods don't have to just be skins. They can be really interesting variations. They can be a whole bunch of different things. The important thing is that they are socially valuable. And think about what the social connection and value of that is. And then finally, strategy goods. Now, what I mean by strategy goods is something which means that I have a different way to play the game. It could be a subtle difference, but it introduces a slightly new way of playing that benefits not just the person paying for it, but also the person who is playing that person. So what that means is you don't want to create strategy goods that just annoy everybody else. There might be some games where that's okay, don't get me wrong, but in general, you want everyone's experience to be better because there's another way to play the game, there's another choice in play, making the game more interesting. Hearthstone is one of the better examples. Those kind of collectible card games, because every new card introduces a new strategy, and everybody has to respond to that strategy. So it's interesting kind of way to look at it. So these are kind of trying to, when you look at your game, you try to break down where the value is, where the fun is, and you try and say, okay, what part of that fun is things I have to have? What part of that fun are shortcuts, power-ups, boosts? What part of that fun is socially interesting, the social value? And what part of that fun adds new strategy? Can I commoditize that? Can I create an asset, a way of playing, a way of charging for that? But then we have to think about the form that takes, he says. Where's my form slide? I seem to be missing my form slide. There we go, form. You can tell I was doing this at 3 in the morning. So my form slide, those shortcuts, those subsistence goods, those strategy goods, they can come in different forms. So at this end, we have a consumable. We have keys, we need keys to unlock things, we can't progress if we're going to unlock things, therefore, let's have a consumable. Consumable is a one-off. I use it, it's gone. They're fantastic for events because I can give away consumables and they can only hold capacity, a certain number of them at any time. So if I've given away too many, it's okay because I'm safe, because they can only hold so many. And actually having the limit of only being able to hold so many means that they need to use them or lose them effectively, which is quite a powerful incentive to keep playing, interestingly. So think about that kind of consumable model. It's really fascinating. I could sell them more capacity. That could be a health potion, gives me more health, but I could have a tome that increases my endurance, which means I have more health that can be filled. Therefore, I need more health potions to fill me up with more health. It can be a fuel tank. I have a racing game, I have a certain amount of fuel I use when I race. I buy a bigger fuel tank, I can do more races before I have to refill. And I can then refill it. Generator is when we start looking at the rate in which I get new things. So what if I get, 3 fuel a day, and I pay to buy a petrol station, which gives me 6 fuel a day. So I'm getting new consumables faster through a purchase choice. What's fascinating about the thinking of this is one-off things we can give away as part of an incentive to make people feel rewarded, which is good. Capacity, which is a decision which, if made early, is really valuable for keeping people playing. Generators, which make it easier, in a similar way to capacity, for people to keep playing and play more in a more engaged way. And then finally, our aspiration goods. These are things we look forward to. We want the Hat of Wonder because everybody wants a Hat of Wonder, and that has certain abilities. The problem with the Hat of Wonder is once you've got it, it's expected. Once you've got a Hat of Wonder, all of the powers that Hat of Wonder has becomes your normal, becomes your default. So you want to think about these permanent goods as a tool to have people look forward to getting them. Because once they've got them, that's it. Their value in terms of engagement is kind of gone. This particular vehicle here was a couple of years ago. It was a Bugatti that was available in CSR2. And you'll notice it's got this product red thing. So it's charity. So this is actually me buying this. I did actually buy this car in CSR2. It has great stats, but I aspired to getting it because it was a charity thing. It was a good car. It was red. It was had social capital, lots of value propositions to do with it. I didn't really race it that much. I just had to have it. So thinking about that the value was having it. Another example I use is the Vorpal Blade. So the Vorpal Blade in Alice in Wonderland is a sword that allows you to kill Jabberwockies. Jabberwockies are nonsense monsters. If I have the Vorpal Blade, I can kill Jabberwockies. That means I now have a new monster I can fight. But once I've got the sword, it's just another monster. Once I've done it a few times, it's just another thing to do. So thinking about how these types and forms work together is a powerful tool to think about where the value is for your player. If I have a shortcut that's consumable, that's called a power boost, I use it and it's gone. If I have a shortcut that's an aspiration good, it's a better car. But if I have fuel, bigger fuel tank, petrol station giving me more fuel per day, bigger car that needs more fuel. Now we've got an interesting cycle, a loop within a loop within a loop. So I hope that gives you a taste of the kind of thinking there. I'm going to sort of go back to a couple of other things. So player life cycle matters to me. There's a, actually I think I've got a no, not sure where the slide is. You can see this curve here. Anyone seen that curve before? Can you see that curve? That orange line? So that curve is the Gartner hype curve. Have anyone heard of that? So if you've done VR, you've probably seen this curve, because everyone got really super excited about VR, and then it basically crashed, and no one cared about it. And we're kind of at the stage here where Oculus Quest is about to be released, and people are starting to get excited again. So the pattern of how people adopt technology. It's where people get overexcited, and then the reality of the things that they want is a little bit less exciting than they thought it was going to be, and then they get over it or they leave. And if they do get over it, then they start to build up their engagement again. I saw this come out when I did the data for the Mobile Operator 3 in the UK, when I looked at the number of days of, the level of activity over the number of days since they first got their account. So how many times they bought games, basically. And this is the curve that came out. I did the same thing when I was at PlayStation Home. I looked at their activity in the virtual world that was on the PlayStation 3, the level of activity they had, and guess what? Same curve. So what I worked out is that actually this curve is actually mapped to player engagement and player life cycle. So you've got to get people excited and interested enough to get them over the paywall or the install wall. Install means, do I have enough space on my phone? I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of space left on my phone. I have to basically delete stuff all the time now. And that means that I don't install everything. I have to make a choice. Do I install it? Do I not? If I do, I then have the worst time ever playing that game. Why? I don't know the controls. I don't know how it fits into my daily routine. I've got to learn how the game plays. Often tutorials suck. And I've got to still feel excited enough to want to carry on playing afterwards. They've got to learn how that game works for them. And that's our job as game developers, to help them learn that. Only once they've learned that and they've started to really engage, that's when they really truly become viable to offer them this wonderful stuff that we've got for them, these great consumables and durables and so on and so forth. If we start seeing people engaging, and we start looking at the data about why they engage, and if we truly love them, and they truly love our game, we will find the things that they want. And we will satisfy those things. We will offer them more value. And that's when they super engage. And that's where they get more revenue going into that game, because you've got people who love that game so much they're willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars potentially. I say that, not with a big eye. I will never spend tens of thousands of dollars. If you get me spending, more than $10, that's me super engaging. Everyone has their own level of super engaging. But some people have lots of disposable income, some people don't. Understanding what the right value proposition is for the right audience comes out of looking at what they do, paying attention to what they want, and the data that backs that up. We often forget to re-engage, but it's an important part of the life cycle. If you don't re-engage your users, guess what they do? Leave, exactly. So re-engagement part, but realizing that a lot of players do leave. They just leave. Typically, day one retention, we're talking about 35 to 40%, depending on the game genre, at day one, left. So you've lost 60%-ish of your users on day one already. That's okay. It's like them looking at the back of a physical box and deciding they don't like the look of the screen grabs. It's the same thing. Lots of people don't buy physical games. We don't count them. It's just that we can count them with free-to-play. But down here, we're talking about 1 or 2, maybe 3% of people. That's okay. How long can we retain them? How long can we give them value? If we have enough people coming in, if we have a funnel like this, we can see the discovery phase leads to fewer people, engagement phase, conversion phase, super engaging phase. And our job is to activate the discovering people so they become engaged. Our job is to convert the engaging people so they become revenue. And eventually, we might find some of them becoming super engaged. Notice I'm not using the phrase whale, although there is one there, because I don't think they're whales. That's another subject for another talk. Everyone talks about whales because it's a term that's easy and it relates to gambling. Gambling behavior is not the same as games behavior. If you want to hear my thesis on that, that's a different talk. My point is that the interesting thing is then this bottom area. If we have the right goods, if we thought about what people want, if we presented things that are valuable, if we've got things that people care about, when your tigers, your guys who are engaging, see the unicorns, the guys who are super engaging, have awesome stuff, I want it. I aspire to get it. Make me want it. And that desire, that sense of tribal connection, is how we help people build up strong communities. So you get this loop, building the community around that process. But equally, we shouldn't discount that engaging users are the ones who give word of mouth, which remains the most powerful marketing tool on the planet. Let's get our engaging users something that they can share and talk about so they tell their friends about how great the game is and the wonderful things they've bought and why that's great, so we can build that activation loop. Just to kind of give you a sense, this is random numbers I've made up, but to give you a sense, I wouldn't expect more than 50% of people to spend anything, do anything, give you any value in a free-to-play context. Now, every game is different, but just to give you a sense of what I think, about 30% are going to do ads only. Maybe 3% will do ads and a one-time offer. Maybe 0.5% will do ads and a recurring payment. And that's probably being a bit generous, depending on the game. And then, if you're lucky, 0.1% will be a larger upsell. I don't necessarily mean they're proper unicorns, the people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. That number of users is probably a handful in some of the biggest games. But my point is really to think about who are your audiences and how do you get them to go from not spending to using ads? How do you get them to go from ads to using a one-time purchase? And so on and so forth. We want to basically encourage people to increase their engagement with us. And that only happens if we show them attention, if we show them affection, if we show them things they want and care about. And it's about joined up thinking, essentially. I could talk about ads, I'm not going to. We had enough to talk about ads. Ads are a really important factor, by the way. I'm not trying to dismiss ads. I see ads as a way of feeding people an opportunity to get something they would have to otherwise pay for, so they can try it, but also where they can unblock, unjam their flow through the game. But what I want to try and get you to think about is, if you think about your game as love, as affection, about retention, we need to think about how we acquire users, how we engage them, how we deliver them content and updates and make them excited, events and promotions that engage them, community, and throughout that process, goods which reinforce that. And again, come back to watch an ad, to continue watching, to unlock. There's all different games where you'll have a loop that suits your game. Think about how you do that process to drive those users towards something that you know they want because you paid attention to them, and get them to think consistently about what the value is for play and where they fit, what the cohorts are, what the messages are, and target those messages to those audiences cleanly by looking at the data, by thinking about what they want, and actually caring what they care about. Because if we're making games, games have to be fun, they have to be appealing, but that's not enough for a game to become someone's hobby. For a game to become someone's hobby, It has to be something where they feel like they're part of the tribe. They have to socially identify that game as part of their lifestyle, their habits, their normal behavior. And that doesn't happen for cheap. That happens because you pay attention to them and you deliver them what they want to see. I could bore you with things like impulse and progression and so forth, but with time running out, I'll skip that. I could talk to you about the use of more advanced techniques like time-limited special offers, scarcity, and also the importance of transparency, telling people what they're going to get. But again, the message really is just act like a retailer that cares and think about the experience that they're getting, whether it's unboxing, visibility, foreshadowing. But it comes down to this. Everything I said to you is very theoretical. But the part of it is keeping the spirit true to what is the player needing. What do they want? What do they desire? And test it. Don't take my word for it. Test it. So put things together, see what small groups do, and do they do what you think? Understand what their feedback is. Look at what they actually do. Design is a hypothesis. It's not a solution in itself. You have to have an idea and test it, adjust that idea based on the results until you continuously improve. And that's it. Is that okay? Does that make sense? There's a lot of information, but hopefully that's not too bad. Okay, does anyone have any questions for me? Go for it.
I'm just wondering if you can share these slides so I can look at them later. And
no problem at all. Happy to share this stuff. If anyone wants to grab a card from me, I'm happy to do that. Like I say, a lot of the work we do is help with game design and production and mentoring. So we do a lot of services around helping people understand how their games work and really trying to inform them how to use the data they already have. So that's why we do talks like this.
Also, you talked about player fatigue and the feel good to the player. And why don't we just say that, for example, 20% of our revenue goes to charity, and that's it, so it can always feel good?
The charity thing, there's two reasons. One is Apple don't like you giving the money away to charity without being very careful about how you word it. That doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means you have to be careful because there are rules. But also, charity is not necessarily an intrinsic motivator. It's an extrinsic motivator. And actually, gameplay requires intrinsic motivation to play. Without that internal desire and internal reward for the satisfaction of play, just slapping on charity, slapping on points doesn't help. But it's a good thing for the brand. Charity, I'm actually talking to a lot of charities at the moment. I did a talk for a charity event recently where I had about 250 of the biggest charities in the UK wanting to understand how to use games to communicate their message and to fundraise. So it's a really important thing to work with, but it's not the same thing as making a great game that they love and understanding that there are fatigue and balancing against that fatigue.
I'd like to hear you talk more about special offers and starter packs, maybe. And also, do you think making or having paying players can maintain or actually getting more people to be addicted to our games?
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the word addictive only because there's currently a process going on with the World Health Organization where they're trying to classify a thing called games disorder, which isn't really scientifically backed, arguably. I'm trying to use a different word because we use addictive all the time in games because it's a good thing to be, so exciting. But unfortunately, they're starting to use that word badly. Yeah, hype is a good word. So the habit, hype, the excitement of play are really powerful things. In order to build that, often repetition is part of that. Reinforcement is part of that. Building, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer the question. A stronger bond, yeah. A stronger bond is exactly right. And that's where social identity theory is a really powerful tool. So social identity theory means that I'm involved in this process, and we are together in it, shared endeavor, and people who don't play are the others. That sense of bonding is a really powerful thing. That's why things like League of Legends is so successful. That happens through a number of factors. It's through exposure, repetition, social behavior, social connection. It's really about this love process I'm trying to sort of talk about. If you really show awareness and interest in the other person playing, your audience, and you give them value, that's how you build true connection. It's a romance. Yeah, and unfortunately I'm over time, which is unsurprising, and as a result, Tony's looking at me, so Tony's up next. So Tony Pierce is going to come up and talk now about a game called Reality Clash and a new way of monetizing, which is really exciting. I'm lucky enough that I was one of the designers on the game, so Tony, I think if it's okay, I'll get you to come up now. I think it's right, isn't it? Oh, you got 10 minutes? Oh, you're half past. Sorry, I made a mistake. I've got more time. I thought I was overrunning. So, thanks, Dave. So, I can shut up if you want me to, by the way, or I can carry on. Anyone got any more questions for me? I should try and answer. Did I answer the... Yes, okay, good. Come on, Sonia, give me some abuse. Oh, starter packs. Okay, we've got 10 minutes, so let's go to starter packs. Let me go back on that. Like I said, apologies for the slides being a bit out of order. I was doing them at 3 in the morning. So let's talk about this first. So having a reason to act now, we talked a little bit about. Here are some tools that you can do to do that. Impulse. Have you heard of the marshmallow test? Love the marshmallow test. You give kids under a certain age marshmallows and you tell them if they don't have the marshmallow and then they come back later, they'll get 2 marshmallows, and then you leave them in a room, and all of them eat them under a certain age. It turns out it's not quite true. Unfortunately, they've redone the test under different conditions, but it's a really nice story. People have impulses. I have impulses. When I see halva at the breakfast when I came to Jordan, I have to have it, because I don't get halva at home very easily, and it's lovely. And I have to have it, and I end up having too much of it because I have no impulse control. Impulse is a good thing in the sense of we want to get something, get a satisfaction from it, get a desire, get a feeling, a good feeling from it. But you have to be careful how you use it. If you do too much impulse-led promotions, it's a bit like having a chocolate stand in a supermarket, and you've got kids going up to it wanting to grab the chocolate, and the mother or the father going, no, can't have it. It's quite a point of frustration. So really thinking about moderation, but smart use of impulse can be really powerful. Progression can be important. I can see how far I have got. Look at how far I've done, how well I've done. That can be really important for having a reason to act now. I am about to hit the threshold of level 20. I'll have one more play, I'll watch one more ad, I'll buy one more power-up. That's a fantastic mechanism. Optimization is a really important thing. I will play a game and I will go back and play it because I want to do it better. I want to use what I learned. There's certain games where I play them and I go, oh, I wish I knew how to do it when I started, because I would have done much more interesting things. So thinking about how you leave space for the player to optimize their experience, and then how they can solve that by using your goods, your monetization, and so on and so forth. Because the satisfaction of having optimized something is beautiful. It's genuinely emotionally, valuable. And then obviously narrative is an important part. The hero passes through the threshold. The monster is ahead of us. What happens next? Come back next week. The Flash Gordon cliffhanger. In fact, one of the narrative tricks I love using, and I see Dave there, so it's reminded me of it. My favorite narrative trick is the one about Columbo, the TV show. If anyone knows the 1970s TV show, best TV show ever made, because it was a whodunit, where you saw who did it, and you still watched it. That's crazy, isn't it? A whodunit, you see who did it, and you still watch it. Why? Because you're not watching the murder. You're watching the detective. You're watching what that detective is going to do and try to predict how he solves the murder. And you know you've got a time limit, because the time limit is 5 minutes before the end of the show, he's going to say just one more thing. And you know that's when he's going to reveal not only who did it, but how, why, and how he solved it. So that you're playing a game watching that TV show to beat him. And if you get your prediction right of how he solved it, you win. So narrative is incredibly powerful, particularly around that Columbo moment where you know there's a time limit, an ambiguous, unpredictable time limit, and you've got to fill it. So this is kind of a good reason to act. And then back to the bit you really want to talk about, but I kind of had to do that first bit to get the context of these. With all those in mind, actually thinking about time limiting. This offer is only available for this period of time. Special offer, buy one, get one free. How do you bundle? So, if, for example, if I have a life point, a health point or whatever, is there a point in selling a one-time play for $1? Or would you sell a bundle of 10 for $1? If you sell a bundle of 10 for $1, what happens is they use it, they've got 9 more to use. So they've got 9 more reasons to come back and play and keep playing. So you've just sold them something which is a retention tool. But I mean, again, don't take my word for it, test it. It may not apply for your game. But if you've done that, also, if they fail the second time playing that game and they have to use a second life, they don't have to go and pay another $1 and be already annoyed because they've spent $1 to get a life they didn't get to finish. So you don't end up grinding them down and making them feel unwanted. You're showing them some love by giving them enough power-ups so they can be sure of finishing that level and still have some left over. That's the difference. That's where bundling can become emotionally powerful. And then moving on from that, scarcity. I mean, digital means not scarce, although Tony is going to show you a way to do scarcity later. Real scarcity, as in this is the one item. It's only one digital item. Scarcity we use all the time in farming games, in harvesting games, in adventure games. How much gold you have available, how much weapons, the right things, the right power-up, the right spell. We use scarcity all the time. But scarcity has to be in the context of the game. If it doesn't have an inherent narrative, if it doesn't have an inherent sense in the game, guess what? You annoy your player. Because it doesn't feel real. If it feels false, there you leave. Because why? You're not being trustworthy. You're not being authentic. Love, authenticity, trust are key to relationships. And transparency is part of that. One thing we learned back in the long days, you know, not before the internet. You had the internet at least. But we learned in the very early days of Java games that if we told you the price of the game at the front, people bought it. If you waited until they got to the description page, we lost them. Telling people is not something we should be afraid of, because you set expectations immediately and you show you're trustworthy. So communication, transparency, authenticity, again, it sounds more and more like a relationship. And then we get to, well, what happens once I bought it? I'm going to unbox it. It's going to feel amazing. I want visibility of what I bought. I want to foreshadow. Give me a chance to watch an ad in order to use something which I wouldn't have otherwise had. And then think about the way that they work together. And on that note, I better stop because I know Tony is now ready. So thank you very much.